Look at this photo. It shows a daily reality for millions of Americans before 1954. Two drinking fountains, separated by a sign that says, "For colored only." By law, black and white children were forced to stay apart in daily life. They had to use separate schools, separate restaurants, and even separate public bathrooms. Then, in 1954, the highest court in the United States stepped in. In a famous case called Brown versus the Board of Education, the Supreme Court ruled that this separation was unfair and illegal. They ordered that all public schools must allow everyone to learn together, essentially erasing that dividing line on paper. But a massive problem immediately followed. Writing a new rule on a piece of paper in Washington, D.C. didn't automatically change the real world. Many state leaders in the South actively refused to listen to the court, delaying the process and keeping their local schools separated for years. Passing a law is really only the first step. For a law to matter, ordinary people have to be willing to step forward, face the resistance, and physically make that change happen in their own neighborhoods. To understand what that takes, meet Ruby Bridges. In 1960, at just 6 years old, she became one of the very first kids to challenge this broken system in New Orleans. Her daily walk to school was terrifying. Instead of crossing guards and friendly neighbors, this first grader had to walk past giant crowds of angry adults. People yelled, threw things, and tried to block her path, angry that she was attending what used to be a white-only school. In this photo, you can see how severe the threat really was. Those men in suits walking her up the steps are U.S. Marshals, tough federal law enforcement officers sent specifically to make sure a 6-year-old girl could safely enter her classroom. Even inside the building, she was completely isolated. White parents pulled their children out of the school, leaving Ruby alone. For an entire year, she was the only student in class, learning one-on-one with her teacher. Think about the mental toughness required to wake up every morning and face a hostile crowd, just to go learn how to read. She proved that immense courage doesn't require a military uniform. 3 years earlier, in 1957, an even larger standoff took place in Arkansas. This is Little Rock Central High School, a group of smart, peaceful black teenagers who became known as the Little Rock Nine were carefully chosen to integrate this massive building. But the state's governor, Orville Faubus, made an active decision to defy the Supreme Court's law. He stated publicly that he would not force his citizens to integrate against their will. Then he took a shocking step. As you can see in this image, he ordered his own state military, the Arkansas National Guard, to physically block the black students from entering the building. Look at the face of Elizabeth Eckford in this photograph. She showed up with her notebooks, simply expecting to learn math and reading. Instead, she found herself walking completely alone, surrounded by a screaming, aggressive mob of adults and armed soldiers. This diagram illustrates a massive legal crisis. When a state governor officially uses state troops to ignore a ruling from the highest court in the nation, the entire system threatens to collapse. When local leaders break the rules to this extreme degree and actively endanger children, it leaves only one option. The President of the United States has to step directly into the fight. President Dwight D. Eisenhower realized he could not let a governor defy the federal government. He issued strict orders to end the interference immediately. His response was extreme, but necessary. He deployed 1,200 heavily armed U.S. Army soldiers from the 101st Airborne Division straight into Little Rock. These soldiers had a very specific mission. They were ordered to form a protective perimeter around the 9 teenagers, push through the angry mobs, and march the kids safely through the front doors of the school. The environment inside the high school was entirely surreal. Every single day, these teenagers needed armed combat soldiers as escorts just to walk down the hallway. It took the full might of the United States military to guarantee 9 teenagers their right to learn. That is how intense the resistance to equality really was. And the troops couldn't be everywhere. Throughout the school year, the 9 students endured severe abuse. They were pushed downstairs, tripped, spat on, and verbally attacked. One student even had acid thrown at her eyes. Going to school felt like walking into a daily war zone. This image captures their strategy. They agreed never to fight back with fists. Instead, they peacefully tolerated the abuse, supporting each other through daily trauma. Their revenge was simply doing their homework, passing tests, and proving they belonged in that school. It is a striking contrast. On one side, you have heavily armed federal troops, state guardsmen, and violently angry adults. On the other side, you just have peaceful kids carrying backpacks and reading books. Judges and politicians can write new rules on paper, but the people who actually forced America to honor its promises were these brave students, walking through the front doors as frontline soldiers for equality.